really bad news for the Red Sox, but kind of explain the oblique, how it affects an everyday player, and why this is a serious injury.
Well, just by nature, swinging a bat is twisting your torso, and the oblique is a big part of that. In terms of physically what you need to do on a baseball field. And it's an injury that happens occasionally. It did look awkward, that swing by Anthony. It was a breaking ball down and in, and he went over the top of it, and you could see immediately he was in discomfort on his lower left side. He reached for it, walking back to the dugout, and when Alex Bregman said post-game that this is a gut punch, and that was before the MRI and before Alex Cora said anything official, players know. They know if it's something serious, if it's something that could keep a teammate out or themselves out for a little while. So you got the feeling that there was something bad that was going to come out, and certainly, Anthony potentially missing the rest of the regular season qualifies.
I don't want to overstate the injury, Bill, but it just seems like without him, the Red Sox aren't a threat to go very far.
Well, and I think that's a valid concern because he's one of the few everyday players in the lineup who you'd feel comfortable hitting against left and right-handed pitching. He's been so mature and so advanced in his approach in terms of being able to get on base and be a spark at the top of the order that, you look at the rest of the lineup and there's a lot of platooning, a lot of mixing and matching against opposing pitchers. You look at the lineup last night, and there are guys in there who you wouldn't have expected to see past Fort Myers. So it is really a concern how they're going to put this together every night.
Yeah, and so where do they go from here? What are how does this temper your expectations?
Well, I think still that they're going to get in the playoffs. I think they've built enough of a cushion, over the chasing pack that they'll at least get a wild card spot. But what's their ceiling in a short series? You figured Anthony has been one of their lead hitters over the last month and a half, 2 months or so. So you take that bat out of the lineup, you're down to essentially Bregman, Story, who still strikes out 5 times as often as he walks, and maybe Duran, who's about 300 points worse in terms of OPS against left-handed pitching than he is against right. Rafaela isn't a guy who necessarily is a thumper, somebody who's going to produce in October. So, your options are really limited. I'm more concerned, though, guys, about pitching in a short series. You're basically down to a 3-man rotation at this point, and heaven forbid if anything happens to Crochet, Bayo, or Giolito.
And the Crochet thing's not unrealistic given his workload and his performance of late.
Bayo's not that far behind, by the way.
Yeah, and so let me ask you this. I'm not overstating it. The AL's not good. It's just not. There's not a dominant team in the AL. Do you disagree with that? I'll ask that first.
No, I think that's fair to say.
It's wide open. Okay, so I don't know how familiar you are. I don't have a lot of problems with the Red Sox. I think it's trope to consistently piss and moan about them. But the Devers trade, if I was a Red Sox fan, would bother me. And here's why. Not only did you get rid of the bat, and fine, it's addition by subtraction. They played very well without him. But you got actively worse. What are you saying, Fred? Well, not only if you would have retained some of the money, you could have gotten better, but the players you brought in, as predicted, have made your team worse. Hicks is worse than a replacement player. May, in my opinion, is probably teetering.
He's a negative war since he showed up, too.
Is worse than a replacement player. So if they don't, and they've played well, which makes the problem worse, but they're making the playoffs. But if they have an early exit, are Red Sox fans right to be pissed about at least the lack of return for Rafael Devers?
You could certainly be upset with what Craig Breslow has done during the year in terms of player acquisition. Before the season, he did very well. He got Crochet, he got Bregman, he got Chapman.
Which makes
Those have all been hits.
Right, because then if Anthony goes down, you still have a formidable lineup, And if you get something in return for Devers, even if it's like a rotational depth that's not May, like a real guy that could be a possible, in a pinch, even a third starter for you, you're talking about a completely different outlook.
Yeah, and they clearly needed a bat. They've been trying to piece this together at first base since Tristan Casas went down, and even he was off to a really tough start at the beginning of the year. Their needs were obvious. They didn't meet them at the deadline. And instead now you're saddled with 2 more years of Jordan Hicks. He's got an 8.20 ERA in Boston in 21 games. Kyle Harrison apparently has a sore ankle. That's why he couldn't pitch the other night. We have not seen him yet. James Tibbs was traded for Dustin May, almost as soon as he got here. And May was a guy who's already moving to the bullpen, who's already 70 innings above his previous career high with the Dodgers. That didn't figure to be an impact acquisition. You could look back on that and say, why did they make that deal at all? For me, it was because you got in the last hour of the deadline. You thought you might get Joe Ryan, and when the Twins finally said no, you pivoted, panicked, and said, oh, no, we need to get a starter. We need to at least get somebody. Dustin May's available. He's going to the bullpen. Let's bring him in. So in terms of strengthening this team over the course of the year, Nathaniel Lowe might end up being somebody over the last 3 weeks and into the playoffs who helps more than just about anybody else you got.
Okay, so let's look at maybe the brighter side here. Is there any reason to believe that Roman Anthony, like Rafael Devers, bad clubhouse guy, and his removal from the everyday situation will somehow propel this team forward, much like Rafael Devers leaving, and they seem to play better afterward? Let's workshop this, Bill.
I like what you're doing there. I actually think it might be the opposite. I think it'd be a great thing for Anthony to stay around the team, while he's recovering from this. If they can get him on road trips and whatnot while he's doing physical therapy, I think that would be a great thing because by all accounts, you hear the older guys talk about his maturity and his approach and just his professionalism. And, I think him being around in September for a pennant race and him potentially being around in October, even if he's unable to play in those games, that's a huge benefit to him and the organization going forward.
Oh, because it's counter to the idea of getting rid of talent. I see. I get it. It is hard not to be cynical. It is, Bill. It's hard not to be cynical a little bit. And I guess they're victims of their own success. But people thought that they'd be a playoff team going into the season. So it's not like, and then especially at the deadline. And look, Seattle hasn't been great. Texas has been terrible. These are all teams that made a lot of moves at the deadline. It's certainly no guarantee. But it did seem like you said Breslow hit in the offseason. Chaim Bloom hit with these prospects, these top prospects. Things seem to be working out for you, and maybe you're a victim of your own success. A little bit.
Well, I'm just going by what they told us in spring training. They told us that this was a year where they were going to be aggressive, where they were going to try to win the division. That was their target at the outset, that they were going to go back to the playoffs for the first time in 2021. Ultimately, I think in 4 weeks, all that will have come true with the exception of winning the AL East. I don't think they can do that now. They're too short in terms of pitching, and this will hurt their lineup. I do not think that they'll catch the Blue Jays or the Yankees, but they will have a chance in October, as you mentioned, against a weak American League, and they could still have a chance to do something here. In 21, they played the Rays and beat them, and they had a chance to beat the Astros in the ALCS. They were really in that series, and that wasn't exactly a flawless team.
Oh, yeah. You're better than the Yankees head-to-head. You got to like Boston in a head-to-head series against the Yankees.
Doesn't matter what ballpark.
It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't matter to me at all. There's no data to suggest that the Yankees can take you in a series. And again, the Tigers can't hit. Seattle's crapped themselves into the deadline. Houston is no world beaters. You've seen Toronto that be very brought down to earth. It's all very winnable. But the question is, if the Red Sox get to that wild card series and lose to the Yankees or lose to whomever, is this season still a success in your eyes, Bill?
For me, I think just based on the goals that they laid out, they wanted to win the division. I don't think they'll do that. And if you do win the division, it's implied, I think, that you will get at least to the American League Division Series. And if they don't get out of the wild card round, they will have fallen short of that. Now, they'll say that there are injuries here and that the roster was short by the end of the season.
I can already write this. Oh, of course.
Yeah, but that's your own fault. But see, Bill, they can say it was a success in some ways and be right because they hit on two young kids. Then they can say that. And they can say we have the most exciting young player in baseball. You could make that argument. The most exciting young player in baseball. And look at Crochet extended himself more than he ever has before. But again, I'm with you. You made these expectations in the beginning of the season. And you were right there. And now it's not over yet, but you were right there. And that's what's frustrating.
And if you admit, if they just got a little depth, just a little
But
depth.
you made the deal, even if you didn't do anything.
And I'm with Bill. Just because they fell so short of expectations early on in the season, that doesn't change the fact that the expectations were so high. Talking about winning the division, they're supposed to be in the ALCS. I mean, that was like a foregone conclusion the way they had put this team together. So if you're judging the success of the season based on the initial expectations, no, they still have to go pretty far in order to deem it a success. You can't change the goalpost just because they played so poorly. Going back to April and May.
And I'll be the first one to admit that at times I might be a little bit unfair, but my standards for them are always going to be high, because they are certainly one of the teams in the AL with the most resources. They ask us to invest more than just about any other market through ticket prices and anything else. And, just with what they've won in this century, they have set the bar so high. Tom Warner will gladly tell you that they've won the most World Series in this century.
Yeah.
That is the standard. They have done that. It's been a great achievement for them. But when they don't match that standard, they don't seem to like when you push back and say, this isn't good enough.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating, but look, there's something to talk about, so at least we have that.
Right.
Bill Koch, read him in the Providence Journal. As always, sir, thanks so much for your time. We do appreciate it.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Red Sox analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.